In this demonstration, we are going to create a client-server application that's going to allow us to send a message and receive a message. To get started, I'm going to click on File, New, Project, and I'm going to select a Windows C# Windows Forms application. On my application, the first thing I'm going to do is set up my form for my server. So I'll right-click and rename FRM server, and I'll make sure that it has a .cs extension. Then when it asks me about references, I will say yes. View the properties of my form and change the text property to server. Next, I'm going to add two different text boxes. One is for the IP address, and the other one is for the port that will be used for communications. Use a label to identify them. I'll rename the text boxes. So this one I'll type in txt host because it's the host address, and the other one txt port. I'm going to change default text of these boxes. So for IP address, I'm going to select 127.0.0.1. Oops, there we go. Just so it already has the addresses that it needs. And these are so it's going to point to itself. But that way we don't need to work necessarily in a networked environment. So we have that. I'll put in a connect button. Actually, I guess a start and stop button. Of course, rename them accordingly. btn stop and btn start. And this declares whether it's going to, or how it's going to connect to the server. I'll add a text box so we can view what's going on. And I'll just put txt status in there. I'm going to select the multi-line property to being true. All right, so that's what we need for the server. Now, what we're going to do is download a library. And to do that, I'm going to right-click on my project and select Manage NuGet Packages. So I'm going to click Browse and select Simple TCP. And I'm looking at the one here for Brandon Potter. That's the one that I want to install in my application. So we're going to use that library. I'll go into my code. And at my form level, I'm going to create a reference. So I'll say simple TCP and refer to the server. and I'm going to name it server. Keep it simple. Go to my form load event, and here I'm going to create a new instance of the server. I'm going to tell it what the delimiter is, which is enter. That's what that stands for. I'm going to tell it what kind of string encoding there is. Next, I'm going to create a new void method. And what this thing's going to do is it's going to display the content that the server is receiving, and it's going to display it in our text box that we created, as well as reply back to the client that's sending information to it. So here I'm going to start off with just server.data received. So that's referring to the event. And I'm going to name this, so server underscore data received. Whoops. And since there's nothing called it, I'm going to click on this little icon. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to click generate method for data received. And look what it does. It creates a void method for us. It refers to the sender and the fact that a message is coming to it. Now we're not going to throw any new exception there. So we're just going to delete the line that it created, but it created the method for us based on our reference. So I found that pretty neat. Next, I'm going to create a string and call it my message. And it's going to refer to the message coming into the server. And I'm going to tell it start at the first position and go to the length of it -1. And the reason why I'm doing that is that the messages that are coming into this server have a delimiter of enter. So I'm getting rid of that character. So we are just working with the text that they sent over to us instead of the additional character. So that's what substring's doing here. We're saying give me the entire message string except the very last character, and then put it in this variable. Next, I'm going to add this to our status. So I'm going to say our text equals actually plus equals the message, and then I'm going to add an extra line too to make this a little bit easier for us to read. Next, we're going to reply back. So I'm going to say reply line. So we're referring to the client. And we're just going to say you said and shoot back exactly what it is that they sent to us. And the way that they know that we're responding is because we're saying you said. But with that, you know that you can send a message to the server and it's replying back. So you know that you've got communication. Now the challenge that we're going to have here is that this method is actually going to be called by a different instance of the program. So we have to tell the program, this program, that it's okay. So I'm going to say txt_status.invoke method invoker and tell it delegate. Oops. So I'm going to tell it everything within here can be executed from a different section or from a different instance of the program. So that's what's going on there. So there we go. All right, so now we need to actually make this work. So I'm going to go to my design. I'm going to double click on start. And we'll update our status. So txt_status.text plus equals server starting. And then to make it user friendly, environment.newline. So we'll throw a new line in there. We need to convert what they typed into us. So I'm going to say system.net.ip address. I'm going to call it just simply IP equals system.net. Whoops. .ip address, .parse, and whatever it is, which comes from that txt host.text that we already created. We'll tell the server to start. And it needs the IP address. And then the integer 32 value of txt port.text. We'll go to stop. So if they click stop, and here we're going to first check if server is started. Server.stop. And here we can even update the screen. Oops. There we go. So if it started, stop it. And if not, well, it wasn't running, but we can tell them server stopped. So there we go. There is our server. So that is running perfectly fine. Next, we're going to work our way to the client. That's going to be done in a new project. So I'll save all. I'm going to right click on my solution, select add new project, and I'll call this one client. I'll rename my form client. Make sure it has a .cs so it works. And then on here, I need some addresses as well. So I'm going to go back to my server and do a copy and paste. So I've got my IP port, and instead of start on this one, I'll say connect. Change that to BTN connect. I'm going to allow them to send a message. So I'll call it txt message. I need a send button. Call that btn send. And by default, I'm going to make that enabled equals false, making it so you can't send a message until after you connect. And then we're just going to put a status box in there, which actually we already had in the server, so I'll just go get that. Whoops, don't need that. Copy, come over here and paste. Change my form property to client. And then I need to add the library to this as well. Because we're working with two different properties or projects, we have to add the package. So I'll do the same thing here and go for my simple TCP and download the same product and install it. Go into my code. Within my form, I'll create a reference to the client under my button connect. I won't allow them to connect twice, so I'll put button connect enabled equals false. I'm going to set the TCP client here, so I'm going to tell it to connect. So I'll create a new instance. Tell it to connect, and tell it the host address, comma, convert to int32, and the port. And then after that, I'll enable my send button. After that, I'll go into under my send. And here, I'm going to create a string. I'm going to call it my message. And now I'm going to say my message equals, refer to my client, so TCP client dot write line and get reply. And the first thing that it wants is the line that we send over. So txt message.text, comma, and then I'm going to tell it to wait for 3 seconds. So to wait for a reply from that server. So what we're saying here is go to the client, call write line and get reply, send it whatever they typed in the message box, wait 3 seconds, get their reply, which is called the message string. That comes under data received. So this reply line right here, that's what's coming back into this one. And put it in this variable called my message. And then up here where I said true, let me get my semicolon like I should have. There we go. Now I'm going to get rid of the last character on this, just like I did in the other one. So I'm going to say start at the beginning. Go to the end, except the last character. Update the status. and just add a new line at the end. So there we go. Hopefully we'll have a functioning application here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit start. And that is going to start up the project with our server, which was the one that we created first. Now I want to start up the other project too. So I'm going to right click on my client project, select debug, and start new instance. And what's neat about this is that we can go through and we can start multiple instances of any project just by going through that method. I'll click start. So the server is starting. I'll go over to my client, click connect, and now let's say, hello there. We'll click send, and we can see the server got the message and it responded back with, you said hello there. This will work over a network by using a different IP address. And that's pretty neat there. So we can see we send over to one application, it responds back, comes over to the other application. So we've got a very simple, really just passing a string back and forth here, but this has many different opportunities where we could send over a string to the server. It could run a query, it could check the time, it could do all kinds of different functions, and it could send back a reply with process complete or give an answer to a problem. So there's a lot that can go on here other than just the very simple um, string work that we have done. And that concludes this demonstration on how to connect through TCP/IP.